I would like to first introduce Jim Bregman, as this is Jim Bregman Presents. He's America's first Olympic medalist, which was a bronze medal from the 1964 Tokyo Olympic Games. He was national champion many times, and as well as Pan Am champion. He is a 10th Dan in Judo and also a past president of the United States Judo Association. So, Mr. Bregman, sir, great to see you.
With you all, and I'd like to welcome you all. Thanks for the great participation. Most of you know Mr. Celotto. He is a world-renowned IJF-A referee. He's past chairman of the USJA Referee Committee. He's a member of the USJA Referee Committee as of now. He's a past member of the USA Judo Referee Committee. And he has conducted for years local, regional, and national referee examinations and certifications. One of the things that is important about modern judo is, in addition to knowing what you should be doing, you really, as a competitor and referees and judges and people in the audience, need to know what are prohibited acts and what are the penalties of contest judo. So Mr. Celotto will, based on his extensive knowledge, take us through a course in basic review of all prohibited acts and penalties of contest judo, which are indeed extensive. So with that, I will introduce Mr. Celotto and turn it over to Rick.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to introduce Ken Duran, who will be operating the PowerPoint. A basic review of prohibited acts and penalties of contest judo is, and I put the word in basic because that's important. If we were to really go through this in detail, we'd be here all week, at least with me. And okay, next slide, please. Now, this does not have anything to do with the prohibited acts, but just a general refereeing. And these are what I would say are the core principles of general refereeing. The first thing a referee must be thinking of is the safety of the competitors. The second thing is the competitors are number one. In other words, sometimes referees have this sense that they're the big cheese or whatever, they got the suit on, so they're the most important thing out there. They're not the most important thing. The players are the most important thing. The referees are, to do a good job, actually, you shouldn't even notice the referee. You know it's a good tournament when no one talks about the referees. They don't complain about the referee. Then the referees have done their job well. They've been unseen. They did their job. They're like almost special forces, felt but not seen. That's how a good referee should be. And the third is fairness. We must provide an equal playing field for both players all the time. There can be no bias or prejudice at all. It's not allowed. And fourth, of course, every single contest, the correct player must win. That's our goal. All right, next slide, please. All right, these are the 2020 IJF rules, and I've included the first 4 or 5 because what has happened, the IJF has taken the competition area, scoreboard, judo gi, and hygiene out of the regular rules and put it into what's the SOR, or sport organization rules. In actual fact is that the IJF refereeing rules are now part of the SOR, the sport organization rules. They're Appendix D. And as you can see, there's a competition area, which we've covered in the review, scoreboard, judo gi, and hygiene. The D1.1 is just a short cultural history and principles of refereeing. And then there are 21 articles. And today we're going to concentrate on Article 18, which is prohibited acts and penalties. Next slide, please. All right, just as an overview, there are two types of penalties that most of you know. I think everybody knows. The Shidos, there are 30 listed prohibited acts, and Hansoku Make are 13 prohibited acts. And let's move on. Next. Now, I want to present some big picture concept. What I call big picture is basically there's a thing you'll hear at refereeing called negative judo, and a lot of the penalties relate to that. Basically, that you're not being aggressive enough, or you're preventing action. That is negative judo. Some of these negative acts have a time feature to them, and others just by the act itself, it's negative. And we'll see that when we go through them. Those of defensive nature to delay the action or prevent action. That's negative judo. We don't want that. Good judo players do not do negative judo. They do aggressive judo, positive judo. Next, please. All right, just from my point of view, is that much of the sport of judo is kuri, or setting up the attack. That's just moving guys around so they get in position so they can enter for a throw. A lot of you must understand this. I mean, if everybody attacked all the time, you've never seen a match like that before, where someone attacks every second. You don't have the energy. So a lot of it's just moving around and setting up. What's very important to the judo referees today, and judo in general in the judo hierarchy, is that the setting up be positive, that it be to an end. You see action where the guy is trying to maneuver him to make an action to throw. So if there's any sight of this negative type judo, then a penalty probably will be required to speed this thing up. Next slide, please. The second most common activity in a contest judo is failed attacks. Very few times do you see at a contest where a guy, when he comes in for a throw, he throws. That's beautiful to see. Very rare. It's very hard. So in most cases, you see people setting throws up and they come in and the other opponent defends against it and it fails. So it's very important you understand what a failed attack is, because one of the biggest penalties we see is a false attack. And that's very different from a failed attack. All right, that's the second most common big picture thing that you should have in your head as a referee. Next, generally the sports leadership are looking for the positive action. I can't tell you how many meetings I've heard about and reasons for why rules change is they're trying to develop the positive action of judo. Next, please. In the cases of time-related negative judo prohibited acts, one example is excessively defensive posture. Next line, please. Is when it's time-related, the IJF uses the word if an action positive action does not occur immediately, then a penalty may be given. Well, that's the IJF's the IJF is taking that word immediately, and it's not our immediately. It's not an American English or even a British English term, because what they really mean is no more than 5 seconds. I'm telling you that IJF, they don't use that no more than 5 seconds. You'll always hear immediately. But in your head, you should think, if they don't attack within 5 seconds, then you should give the penalty. If you were to give a penalty, a negative judo penalty immediately, then most judo players would be out of the match within 1 minute because they don't move that fast. No one moves that fast. You've got to get the guy time to set up. And as I said, big picture, if most of a match is Sukuri, you have to allow them to do that. You have to allow them to set up. So the word immediately is the IJF, meaning no more than 5 seconds. Now, if you wait more than 5 seconds, sometimes they won't say anything. Other times they'll tell you you're not quick enough. But you have to be careful. This is what makes the difference between a local, regional, national, and then international referees. When to wait to stop the match for this negative judo and give the penalty. Next slide, please. All right, now let's review the Shido prohibited acts. Next. The first prohibited act is excessively defensive posture. Basically, this is seen with a straight, stiff arming action. Generally, the perpetrator is bent over at a 90-degree angle. That makes it easy. When he's 90 degrees and both arms are stiff and he's keeping the guy out, you can call that right away. I mean, it's very clear. But the problem is what happens is some of these players are at 45-degree angle body and they might have their arms bent, but they're still like two steel rods. They're just bent. Then you have to give that a little more time to see if he's being completely negative about it, or if he's trying to also make action. And it can be very clear to see this person because one player is trying to attack and the other one is in an extremely defensive or excessively defensive posture, or has that kind of extremely defensive attitude. Next slide, please. Some of these come with videos and some don't. We didn't have a good one on that. False attack. It's very important in your head as a referee that you know the difference between a failed attack and a false attack. Next line, please. The failed attack is where it looks like the Tori made an effort. The most common false attack is the drop shoulder throw, or a Seo Otoshi, where they drop to their knees. If they drop to their knees and there's no effort to throw, it's just like what the referees call being busy but not active, then a penalty can be given. This is not a time issue. This is an action issue. Next, some of the signs we can tell the difference between failed attack and false attack is some of these possible signs you will see. The first is they don't turn completely. They don't go 180 degrees when they turn in and they're facing the same direction as their uke. However, let me make it very clear that sometimes players may go in half turned at 90 degrees instead of 180. They don't do the full turn. But on the upper body, you can see them really trying to pull them off balance and really trying to throw them. And in that case, you have to be very careful about this complete turning thing. So, but if there's genuine effort made, then they don't have to make the full turn. So this isn't black and white. This can be very gray sometimes. The next sign, the next number 2 is no off balancing, very little. When they come in, they may still have a grip, but they drop, but the uke, that isn't pulled forward at all, or it's pulled so slightly forward. But then you as a judo player yourself and as a referee must see, did the uke have to step forward or drop his hips to get his balance? Was he off balance? If he was off balance, then there was an effort by Tori to make the throw. So it was a failed attack. The next very clear case that the attack was false is if the Tori lets go. He comes in, he completely lets go with both hands, and he goes flat to his face. That kind of makes it very clear that's a false attack. However, if he grabs, he turns, he pulls the guy, and he feels a brick wall, and then he feels maybe a counter coming. If he lets go at that point, he failed the attack, and if he feels he's being countered, he has to get out. And if that means letting go, I call that like an aborted attack, like pulling an ejector seat, getting out of plane before it crashes. That's a case where it can be very tricky as to when to call false attack versus failed attack. And let's see an example of false attack, or some of them are almost false attack, some of them are false attack. Tori, big point here is Tori makes a genuine sincere effort to set up off balance and then throw uke. This is not a false attack, it's a failed attack. Now we used to, just while white drops in, he tries to do the throw, but it fails to work. Now notice he turned completely, well, almost completely. He did in that one, but the Blues defense was so strong. The problem is, I will tell you right now, this is one of these, this could be a hair splitting case. In other words, some referees might call it, because you can see in this case, this is at a world level event. This referee called false attack. Now, it should be false attack. And the false attack gesture is where you make fists near your chest and push them out and then pull them down. That indicates false attack. So that's a correction. Sorry about that.
Hey, Rick.
And yeah.
I'm sorry, Rick. Ralph had a question on how long do we wait for a stiff arm penalty?
5 seconds. Immediately. That you use the IJF window of, to call it immediate, because it's negative judo, it's not positive judo. So you give them up to about 5 minutes. If they don't attack, then be sure, then you can call mate and give them the stiff arm penalty or defensive posture penalty. And that's where you stick both arms slightly above your shoulders and lean forward, indicating like you're in an extreme defensive posture. That's the referee gesture. Okay, Ken, go ahead, continue. Some referees might call this false attack, but the IJF says this is no false attack. There was genuine effort made. He didn't let go, and he actually made the second attempt. So he was trying. He was positive the whole time. Can you continue the action again to see it one more time, Ken? Or do we have to move on? Now, his off balancing wasn't great, but enough that you shouldn't penalize someone for it. Let's move to the next one. He completely let go. So in this case, hit the next button and get the words up. The IJF feels this is mate and then Shido blue for false attack. And again, the gesture is the hands come to about chest height, a few inches from the chest, you push out and then pull straight down just to about a foot. And that indicates to the player that you do that to the player that committed the penalty, and then you point at them and say Shido. Okay, next slide. Next example. All right, in this case, you can see that white just let go. He turned, but he completely let go with no intent to throw. And Ken, can you move it forward one? So this is mate, then Shido white.
If there's a question, if the uke pushes the tori and the tori lets go, is that still a false attack?
No, if that's a question, I'd have to see when the push occurs. If they're face to face and they push, no. If he's turned around 180 and he's doing the throw and the uke's defense is so strong that the tori pops off, like it's so and he get ripped away. But you see, here's the key is, was Tori making a genuine effort to do the throw? And you have to use your judo knowledge to see that. If you see a genuine effort to do the throw, then the uke does a hip check and just slams the guy away from him, and the hands rip away. No, that's not the Tori's fault. That's the uke doing a good super defense. It's wonderful. No, the uke should not be blamed for that kind of action. So there is no penalty in that case. Okay, let's move on. All right, the third prohibited act is pulling the opponent down, not in accordance with Article 10, which is how to get into newaza, how you transition into newaza. And pulling someone down is just simply hikomi. I think many of you heard the term of hikomi gaishi, which is a takedown technique. It's also a throw. It's like similar to like sumi gaishi, those kind of takedown throws. You can score from them, and some you can score from or just take the person down. But hikomi alone means pulling the guy down just to enter groundwork. And that's not allowed if it's not very skillful. And this is a gray, we don't generally see this penalty called a lot, but it is in the rules. And if a person just drops to the ground, fighting a guy and he hasn't failed at an attack and then continued into groundwork, or he wasn't thrown, or throws a guy and they both fall to the ground and then continue into groundwork, those are all legal ways to go into groundwork. But if the guy just does a fake tomoe-nage or whatever, just to get into the ground, that could be a penalty. I'm saying it's very gray. That's a high level kind of interpretation, which we're not going to cover. But I just want to make you aware that this penalty can exist. Okay, next line. When pulls his opponent down into neishisei, not in accordance with the rules. That's the other thing I want to make. If you don't understand neishisei, basically that's ground position. We have had a habit in the past of calling neishisei newaza, but the fact is newaza means ground technique. Kesagatami is a newaza. But when you're both on the ground, it's supposed to be neishisei. This was made clear about in 2018 IJF clinic at the IJF level, where Mr. Umura, the president of Kodokan, went through this so that we use the right words for, it wasn't like judo. I think everybody thought it had to do with judo. Didn't it? Just use the right Japanese terms when they're in the ground. It's neishisei. When they're standing, it's tachi shisei. It's not tachi waza. Tachi waza is osotogari. It's a technique, a judo technique. We've all made the problem, and we will continue to make that thing because we've been using the wrong words for so many years. We know what we're talking about. And then when someone says tachi wazi, what do you stand? Tachi shisei is better, and nei shisei is the better word, the proper word. Okay, next, opponent does not take advantage. You call mate. So if a player goes down and the other player just remains standing, then or like gets pulled off balance, but he keeps in the standing position, the referee should call mate, and then you penalize the offender with shido. Next. If the opponent takes advantage, in other words, if the offender tries to drag the opponent down and the opponent being dragged down continues and gets the other guy in a hold, let that action continue. However, I will say at this point, it is confusing as to whether, I'll tell you, maybe 8 years ago and up to 40 years ago, if you'd made the illegal act and then you let the other guy take advantage, the bottom guy who did the illegal act got a penalty, Shido. But in actuality, the last 5 or 6 years of the rules, I don't see that in the rules anymore. It's not written that way. So they're almost saying, if you get pulled down and the other guy takes advantage, forget about the penalty. And until I get some clarification on that, that's the way you have to look at it, is just forget about the penalty in this particular case. Okay. The fourth prohibited act is non-combativity, or they don't even use that word anymore. They're calling it passivity. And what has happened, it used to be, if you didn't do an attack within 20 to 30 seconds, or the earlier rules were approximately 25 seconds, you would receive the penalty of non-combativity. And that was this traveling gesture that basketball uses. The palms are flat, thumbs down, and then you palms towards your chest, and you make this rotation, one or two or three cycles of it, generally two. Three almost is too long. But now they're allowing as long as there's positive advancement and the security, the setting up of the action is positive, he's trying to set people up, then with a normal kumikata, normal grip, then you are allowed to continue with that action for up to 45 seconds. So we're giving the players time to set things up. And this is relatively new. This is less than 10 years old, this 45-second thing.
Hey, Rick,
Yes,
it's been my experience with the non-combativity, though, it doesn't have to even go 20 seconds. If Tori has made 3 or 4 genuine attacks and Uke has done nothing, you can nail him early too.
I'd be, if you believe the guy is truly negative, then you can do that. But if you watch the IJF, they tend not to give these penalties out. And that's another whole issue. The kind of interpretations I'm giving you are for local, regional, and national level. When you go to the IJF, you go to their clinics and listen to what they have to say. They have a different view on the application of penalties for world-class athletes. That's not what we're dealing here with. We're dealing with national and below. All right. So again, in the 10 or 15 years ago, I absolutely agree with Charlie. That's the way it was. Of late, I'm not seeing that much anymore. And the 45 seconds to me personally is, whoa, that's way too long. But the IJF is saying, as long as it looks positive, they're trying to get into a throw, then you give the opportunity for the player to set the throw up. Next, please.
Rick, before we go forward, we have another question. I've seen many times where a player attempts a throw, does not get it, and goes to the ground, and the other player just walks back to the line. Shido for not taking advantage of the situation?
What was the last part there?
Should there be a Shido for not taking advantage?
No.
No.
The top player has the right. The top
walk.
player can his game. Wonder if I've seen many times where a player isn't ready to go out there, and his coach tells him, "Don't go to the ground with that guy. He'll tear you. He'll tear you up." And that's what players do. They'll go to the ground and hope to God you come down, and then he'll tear you up. The guy's super on the ground. So if the top player chooses not to go down, that's his prerogative. So walking away, all the referee does is say mate. The bottom player gets up and they restart the contest. There's no penalty in that situation. There should not be a penalty. Okay, next, non-combativity. We did that. There must be positive progression, as I mentioned. To put the hand, arm, foot, or leg directly on the opponent's face. That's not allowed. And if you move to the next line, it's interesting, just a slight historical. Ken, could you move to the, all right. According to the rules today, and for the last 10 or actually 20 years probably, the face means that area within the line bordered by the forehead, the front of the ears, and the jawline. I can tell you from 30, 40 years ago, even 25 years ago, that the definition is a little different. But today, the definition is the jawline. That hasn't changed. In front of the ears, that hasn't changed. What has changed is it's saying the area bordered by the forehead. And the forehead comes down to the eyebrows, so the face, we jumped one. Okay, thank you. The forehead, the face comes from just at the eyebrows down to the chin. So if you put a hand in the guy's face, like trying to get out of Keisagatami, you reach up and you grab them and try to pull them, not allowed. If you take your arm across their face, it's not allowed. But you can put your hand on their forehead, like you're doing a harakajime from the top. If you put your hand or a bar arm here on the forehead and you lift the chin away, then you can slide your hand in and finish them. That's okay. Now, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that was not okay. Because I can remember at clinics, they would say, one of the Shimpan senseis I had, the referee teachers, was the face is that part of the head covered by the mask of the no drama. Of course, everybody in the room go, what did he say? If you don't know what no drama is, it's Japanese theater, one of them, and that's a face, it's a mask that covers the front of the face. And the forehead was included. And then they'd say, well, the forehead, the face is that area by front of the ears, the jawline, and the hairline. Then, of course, they make the bald jokes. So some guys' hairlines go back to the back of their, no, we're the normal hairline. But all that's gone now. The face is from eyebrow to chin and to the front of the ear. So any part of that that's deliberately and directly grabbed, that's illegal. And it could be with the foot or the leg or the hand or the arm. Anything that goes across the face, that should not be allowed. You don't see it that often. Maybe you think you'd see it a lot. One place it is missed, though, is when someone does jujigatame. If it's neatly done, there's nothing on the face. But I've seen cases where a guy will come in with a very aggressive jujigatame, and they'll take that leg that goes over the face and like slam the thigh in the face 4 or 5 times just to loosen them up a bit. That's not good judo. Maybe it's good jujitsu or something. It's not good judo. All right, let's move to the next slide, please. All right, now Shido 6 is to go outside or push your opponent outside. Next slide, please. Okay, competitor.
I'm sorry, Rick. We have a question. Is there a time limit? Sometimes on the mat, your hand slips. Is it an automatic Shido?
With regard to
the face?
Oh no, if it's incidental, no. If he does not take, if it goes there and he puts his hands there, then he takes it off. That's incidental. No, it has. You have to see it actually like gain an advantage from it. So he pulls the head and then he brings a leg up to hook his leg and then pushes him away. That's the penalty. That's a penalty. That's not allowed. But if it's incidental, it accidentally touches the face, you let it go. That's the difference too. As you grow through the national level and then international, you begin to learn when it is appropriate to interfere and when it is not appropriate. There are just so many different variants on something as simple as the hand going in the face. Okay, competitor may go outside into the safety if there is an attack where there's a tori and uke in progress and the opponent is defending against the attack. So anytime one guy's attacking the other, the attacker can go outside if it's normal action, and the defender can go outside if he's trying to escape from the hold. If they're just walking around in tachi-shisei, in a sakuri situation where they're setting something up, and one of them steps out, then a penalty may be deserved. And if both of them step out, then definitely a penalty may be deserved. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, if a contestant puts 1 foot outside of the contest area without immediately attacking or not returning immediately inside, the contest area, the offender is penalized by Shido. So that I call this 1 foot, 2 foot. Okay, just remember that. They go out with 1 foot, they attack, or they come back in within 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It's got to be quick. Boom, boom. If they stay out there, then it's mate and Shido penalty. The other thing is if they, well, we didn't get to that yet. We'll get to that in a moment. But this is the 1 foot step out. Next window, please. Make sure you watch for this. Now, here's the 2 foot thing. The 2 feet outside the contest area, the offender is penalized by Shido. So if the one player steps out with 2 feet, it's right there, you call mate. Now, if he attacks, he steps out with 1 foot, and then while he's attacking, like in Ken, a stepping kind of action, the other foot goes out, that's okay because there's action. Same if the Tory steps out with 1 foot when he's just setting the guy up, but then when he goes in for the attack, his other foot starts inside and then it goes outside, that's okay. But if both feet go outside and then the guy outside tries to throw, it's no good. The throw is outside. It's mate, and the player's penalized with Shido.
Rick, we have a few questions. Tom, could you unmute yourself and go through your 3 questions for Rick?
Sure. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember, Erwin Cohn would actually intentionally set people up in the corners. And when he'd attack, the guy would try to defend it and he'd step out because he's, in my opinion, was being pushed out. Is that my correct interpretation on that, Rick?
If you as a referee believe that the attack that's being done is real, then you can step out to avoid the attack. But if there are cases where players will maneuver people to the edge.
Yes.
But if the other guy, the problem is a lot of dojos don't teach edge play. They teach judo and they don't get into intricacies of, I've seen so many very top level players being walked out nonchalantly, and the player who steps out hasn't a clue he's even near the edge. That doesn't, if you're an international player, they seem to know exactly when they're on the edge. So if another player maneuvers the guy out and it doesn't look obvious, then when a guy steps out, he's out. Too bad. Whether he intended to go out or not, that doesn't matter. He broke the law. Now, as we'll get into the pushing action here, if the other guy's got his arm stiff and he's like running the guy out, that's different than the guy's pushing the guy. But if he just has normal grips and they're moving around and they get near the edge and one guy happens to step out with 1 foot and he stays there for more than 3-4 seconds, that mate, Shido. If he steps out with both, it's mate and Shido right away. Any other, Tom, any other?
Oh, no, sir.
We have one more. The question is, what is the current correct hand signal for stepping out of the mat?
All right, that's the one I accidentally showed for false attack. What happened was the one we did years ago was stepping out with our foot. We touch our toe out and then bring it back in. They didn't like that in Europe, I guess. So they decided they were going to curve their hand down to indicate and trace the arm is straight, and you trace the line that where they went out. And then you indicate to the player, Shido, with pointing at them. Now they don't want you to curve the hand. The hand is straight, and always, just a little tidbit is for a referee, make sure your thumb is just tucked in gently there. When you do your mate gesture, your wazari ipan gestures, your osekomi gesture, every gesture, your thumb is tucked here. Don't have it out here. Okay, they're not going to take your license away if your thumb's out here, but this looks, pardon my French, crappy, terrible looking. It's called the army uses, it's called a knife hand. So you don't point at anything, you go, this is the way it is. So in judo, we use the knife hand to indicate the winner, to indicate ippon, to do this. Do most gestures that require the flat palm. Is just you don't tuck it under, because when I see that, I think the guy's nervous. He's like too tense. Just whoop, There it goes. That's nice. Perfect. Now, the problem is when your arms are hanging to your side, if your thumbs tuck like that, I think you're nervous too. You should be just let your hands dangle normally and only do this when you're going to do the gesture. Sorry, I stepped off the prohibited act trail. And in any event here, did that answer that question, Dennis?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, they're into the flat hand thing and indicate. I don't know. There was a thing about you should not do it behind you because it looks awkward. So just do it to one of the sidelines. For the US, well, for easy, if the guy steps out on the left side, then you can indicate the line with your left hand, or if he steps out on the right, or if he steps out in front of you, you do it to the front of you. And remember, please make sure your elbow remains stiff and it's from the shoulder, and not like a robot, but just naturally from the shoulder. Looks better that way. If you're stiff, that looks awkward, and you don't look like a good referee when you do your gestures in a stiff manner, like a robot. Next 2 feet. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Right. If a contestant is pushed outside the contestant area, pushed outside the contest area by the opponent, then the opponent shall receive a Shido. Next. Okay, if the competitors leave the contest area, they are not penalized by Shido when the attack is engaged in a valid position. This is the IJF wording. And that's basically what the first slide said. Basically, if there's an attack going on, a real attack, and there's a tori and an uke, then either player can step outside to either make the throw or defend against the throw. Next, please. All right, this is just a small example. The red is outside, the 1 foot step out, and blue still has a foot in. So in the case the 1 foot step out, if blue did an attack now, even though he's got 1 foot completely out, it's still a valid attack because he's in when he starts the throw. However, once blue steps out with both feet, it's mate right away. No attack can occur. You can't step outside, then start the attack. That doesn't work. Next slide, please. Okay, here's some examples. Now, this isn't just black and white, very clear. This can be confusing where some people might say, one person stepped out and the other one pushed him out. Now, I wish we could open up to take a vote on this. We haven't gotten that far, and we don't have people unmuted because of the chance of someone slipping in and causing us grief like happened a year or two ago. So basically, I'll tell you, the IGF in this case feels that this was watch white. There's a couple of hand grabs, which we'll talk about. She didn't constantly push the girl. She pushed her, then came off of her. The other girl started stepping back. So the white player came in again. And so blue is the one that stepped outside. And the fact is that white did do an attack, but if you watch closely, blue is outside when white attacks. So you can't say there was an attack going on. So in this case, Ken, if you can move it up to the next slide, hopefully, or the next. Yeah, the IJF says this is mate and Shido for blue for stepping out. And in this case, let's see what happens here. This is another tough one. The problem, these videos were made for the IJF referees, so they're all kind of tough. It's almost like they're doing sumo. They both have the belts and they're trying to push each other out, but in judo, you don't lose if you go out. But in this case, because it's dynamic and everything, in this case, if you move this next slide, please, or the next comment, the IJF feels in this case that, in fact, that Blue stepped out because there was no real attack occurring, and he could have tied Sabaki around the edge if he wanted to. This to me is what I call a hair splitter. It's like some guys that say, I don't see that. I think that it should be allowed. That's fine. But I'll tell you, if you go to the IJF, they say Shido, Blue, for stepping outside. This just seems just so dynamic. It could cause some people problems. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. Here's another case. All right, if you notice this, he was very quick to, now, the Blue doesn't believe he made an illegal act, so he pulls the old sit down or squat down deal. But watch carefully, White gets pushed out. And if you watch Blue, his arms are stiff and his body is in a defensive action, even though we don't have the best view for it. Even from this side, we can see that he was very defensive. Now, interestingly, notice that White never steps out with both feet. He only steps out with one foot, but he's out there for an extended period of time. So the IJF says, if you would move to the next line, please. That this is Mate and Shido for Blue pushing out. Notice how leaned forward Blue is. He's just holding him out. He's not trying to set him up so that when he pushes him and the guy pushes back, he goes in for some forwards like Sewanage or something. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. Now you can see I think, that Blue is really pushing. And what does the next, what does the IJF say on this? Next line. Yeah, Mate, Shido, Blue pushing out. Now he is not in an extremely defensive kind of pushing position, but it is enough to see that he's not setting the guy up so he can come in from his reaction of being pinned against the edge. And it's almost like White kind of gets to the point where he says, well, he better do an attack so he doesn't step out. So he does a spin, but basically it was a bailout in this case. It wasn't an attack. So this is clearly push out. Next slide, please. Let's skip this, please. We're going behind. Can we skip this? It's the same kind of thing. All right, this is a case where Blue starts to throw in. He's making an effort to do the throw, but you see the referee actually gave him the penalty. But here Blue comes in. He's 1 foot out. He does a nice Taitoshi. So he's in action. No penalty. Let the action continue. No penalty. Outside as a result of the action. So you should not give a penalty in this case because he really tried. Okay. Next slide, please. Well, all right. The seventh penalty is crushing. To hold one's opponent in a bent over position. That's putting your arm against their neck, behind their back and crushing them down. It's called bending position. The IJF calls it bending position. And high collar grip and using the forearm to keep them down. Next line.
We have a question, Rick.
Yes.
Mickey had a question.
Mickey.
Rick, I just wanted to make one comment. There are some uh, A referees who really are more liberal with the dynamic edge rule, that what they'll do is if they see action going and they skip along both feet out briefly and the action is dynamic, that sometimes they want it to continue. I just want to say to those referees that there are some, you got to follow whichever A is your leader, who's the jury occasionally. And that happens with some dynamic edge or the out of bounds rules.
Okay, good. And that's true. Sometimes they might have a different interpretation of this. The interpretation I've given is the one that I see now in the IJF level. So be aware of that some A's have different opinions. It's like judges have different opinions on different things. Any other questions? We have to hold the opponent down in a crush position that does the doer use the action to set up and attack. So if you keep them just crushed down, it's okay if you crush them down in order for the guy to try to come up and then you come in on him when he's coming up and do some throw. But if you just keep them crushed for more than 5 seconds, then that's crushing. So you give the penalty for that. Let's move to the next slide. His opponent trying to stand up. The other guy, is he trying to stand up or is he just completely overwhelmed? And there is concern that in some cases when the referee gives a penalty for crushing, it's actually the bottom guy was in extremely defensive posture that should have got the penalty. So there's a thing about that you have to be very careful about. Next line, please. The question the referee must ask himself is Tori holding the uke down, or is the uke maintaining extremely defensive posture?
And Rick, we have a question. What is the sign for crushing?
Well, basically making believe the player's in front of you and closing your hand on the collar and then pulling your hand and pushing down like that. That's crushing. All right, next slide, please. I hope that's clear enough. Did I answer that for you, Tom?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. To hold one's opponent with both bent over position, is the opponent trying to stand up? We mentioned that. And again, it's after 4 or 5 seconds of crushing, then you give them the penalty. Let's move on to the next slide. We're running quite behind. Very interesting. All right, these are just some pictures of crushing. Here's White with his hand over the back, crushing him down. Let's move to the next slide and get to the video, hopefully. Boy, this is. All right, now watch. Notice not only Blue crushing him down, but notice Blue's right hand is keeping his sleeve down too. He's keeping him bent over. And that's one of the very clear signs of crushing is notice how he's pushing that guy down. He's holding that guy completely down. And he's not doing an attack. He's not letting him up and then coming in on him. So that's definitely a penalty of crushing. Now he's doing, he's just, whatever, he did the false attack gesture. I guess that's good enough wherever he's from. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Here's another holding the sleeve down and crushing the head. Very clear, crushing. So Mate, give him the penalty. He's right, that guy's right on the money. Let's move to the next slide. Now here's White's got a hand on one hand behind and one hand in front on a high lapel collar, and she's pulling the player down. And keep her, drags her down and tries to keep her down. This is a little hairy because the White's still trying to make the attacks, isn't completely defensive. But the IJF says crushing. Can we have the next line, please? That's like, for me, a hairy on the border whether to give it or not. Well, let's put your hand on, almost on the face, but not quite. Crush her down. Now she's using her head and chin to keep her down. Crushing. Next slide, next line to verify. Yeah, he gave it. That's also interesting. All right, next. And avoid taking hold is the 8th Prohibited Act. This is where the player will slap the hands away and won't let them grab. And we have a gesture we call as patty kick, where you do like that. That indicates the slapping away the hands, and you can give a penalty in this case. It's intentionally to avoid taking kumikata in order to prevent action in the contest. Let's move to the next slide, please. Slapping the hands away, stepping back, that's part of the deal. And the referee used the patty kick gesture. Let's move on quickly. All right, a conventional grip is actually covered under this Prohibited Act. I don't know how or why, but basically a normal grip or conventional grip or what we call orthodox grip is, with the lapel, with your right hand grabbing their left lapel at chest height, at normal, about center chest height, and your left hand grabbing underneath their forearm, the gi under their elbow, is the standard basic kind of classical grip. Now in visually impaired judo, instead of under the elbow, they require grabbing the behind the bicep of the gi. That's how they start the proper visually impaired match. They start with the grips intact, and then the referee says hajime from there. So they already grip. So that's a conventional grip. And you can grab anything. You can grab 2 lapels, 2 sleeve ends, 2 elbow, 2 armpits, as long as one hand's on one side, one hand's on the other, on the jacket, gripping above the belt, that's allowed. Okay, let's move on. Next slide, please. And unconventional grips are those grips that don't fall into the normal or conventional category, and that's 2 hands on the same side. The crossback grip, where you reach across to the other side of the guy, and you have 2 hands on the same side also. In that case, 1 hand grip, you only holding on to 1 grip. The pistol grip, which is you're grabbing the sleeve end in a pistol form, like you're holding a pistol, and a pocket grip, which is generally on the top, where you take the sleeve end and you fold it like that, and it's pocket grip. Some people in the early days call it a cat's paw grip. If that grip occurs at the edge of the sleeve, if the sleeve, of course, were down here, or the pistol grip was here, then it was illegal. Now, those 2 terms are actually not in the rules. They're a little bit in the rule, but not like they didn't have their own penalties. 15 years ago, they had their own penalties. Now they're lumped in with this Article 9 or Shido 9, Unconventional Kumikata, where if the guy grabs it and he grabs it this way or grabs it with the pocket grip and then immediately throws with it, no penalty. Only if they remain in a defense, if they remain here for the 4 to 5 seconds, do you give it, or they hold it back, they hold it in a defensive nature, then you give the penalty. Otherwise, the pistol and pocket grip you can use them to attack. Same with a belt grip. You can grab the belt and attack. It's okay. But if you just grab the belt and hold it and walk around with it, 5 seconds later, Shido. The other thing you should know also, if you have these unconventional grips and you grip like the belt and you come in for an attack and it fails and the guy braces on you and you don't move, or he doesn't move, and you step out, and then 2 seconds, 3 seconds later, you come in again with a real attack, you can keep the hand on the belt, or you can keep the hand in the pistol grip, because you're doing a real attack within that 5-second window. So you can continue to do that. Generally, after the second or third or fourth attack, they let it go because they know they're not going to get through that defense. Okay, next slide, please. Here's just the pockets, grip, pistol grip, wrist grip, which I didn't mention it, but we didn't name them all, but there's all kinds. Next slide. This is the crossback grip. You could have, like in the third picture, you have, he's over the shoulder and he's got a grip on the back. Here, he's just got his wrist hanging. Here, he's got a little bit of the tricep back of the sleeve. These are also considered cross grips. Okay, next slide, please. And this is two hands on the same side. This is, again, you can do this for 5 seconds. Then after 5 seconds, you have to mate and Shido. If he grabs this, he drags the guy along, and then he goes in for Yama or Rashi for the first one. That's good grip. Then you let it go. Next slide, please. Then we have just one hand grip, either like this, a crossover grip, and you can have one on the same side, or just the sleeve. There's the one on the right is, I think we call that the Russian grip in the early days, because they did a lot of those moves from Sambo. All right, next slide, please. These are all unorthodox grips, so they're allowed to do them to do the attack. And these are different belt grips. Again, you can grab it, do the throw, and then if you just keep it there, it's a penalty. If you attack again and again and again, you can keep it there. But the window is 5 seconds, then it's ended. You have to attack within 5 or let it go. Next slide, please. Let's watch what happens here. Okay, you can see that blue has a cat's paw grip or pistol grip. He's got a pistol grip, and he's holding it defensively. If he had grabbed it and then went in for an attack, okay, but he defensively held it. And white is just trying to demonstrate to everybody in the play, oh, look, he's doing an illegal grip. Okay, next line, please. All right, Shido blue pistol grip. Okay, next video. Now let's watch the front end of this. He's got a pocket grip. He's holding a pocket grip. Now the thing is, you don't see it right away. He has it now, but it goes up to 5 seconds where he has not done any attack, and the referee has a better view, so he calls it and penalizes him. Next. Next. Yes, okay, pocket grip, good. All right, this is a crossback grip, but notice blue. What is blue doing? He's constantly attacking. So in this case, let's watch it once again. So here we go. Could you put up the line, Ken? Skip it to the next. He goes into cross back grip, and he goes right forward you there. He's going for some kind of haragoshi or something. He tries Osoto misses. He gets that one in. During that entire process, he was attacking. So in this case, there's no penalty. Let's move to the next slide, please.
Hey, Rick, what's the signal for hold the belt or one-sided grip too long?
You can do like that. Hold your hands that away. If he's doing the cross back grip, you could just imitate the, like reaching over the back. But generally, this is two hands, same side grip. And remember, do this towards the player. So you did this, and then you do the gesture, and then penalize them. Next slide, please. All right, this is holding the sleeve ends. You can hold both sleeve ends and go in and throw the guy. That's fine. But if you hold them defensively, again, 5 seconds, if you're keeping them stiff armed out, it's illegal. Same if you have the end of the jacket skirt comes out of the belt, you can hold the end of the jacket. And you really can't do much. I mean, there's not much that you can do there. You can't, maybe you can do Morote Gari easier from there, or Morote Seonage, not Morote Gari. But if this occurs, this is rare. You hardly ever see this. Next slide. And this, you see, this is also kind of rare. The higher level players do it. They either grab their hands or they interdigitate the fingers like that, like they do during CPR or something, but the other way. If you can do this for 5 seconds, after 5 seconds, once it goes to 6 seconds, mate, boom, Shido, it's not allowed. It's defensive, you're not getting anywhere. Next, and again, that's rare. It happens, but you don't see it that often, especially most local tournaments. Fingers in the sleeve and the pants end of the waist. You're not allowed to put your fingers in the sleeve end, again, up here, or the pants leg, standing or in groundwork. All right, so be aware. And this is an old rule from the Kodokan rules, because people would grab and get their fingers twisted and dislocated. Okay, next slide, please. All right, bend the fingers back. Generally, the only time I ever see this is someone's choking. Someone might try to grab the fingers to pull it off. If you grab the fingers and you do not take them out of normal range, that's okay. You can push the hand this way. But if you take a finger, it says bend back. That means taking a finger and doing it this, or 2 fingers or 3 fingers, or the whole hand, and trying to break it against its normal range of motion. That's the illegal act. So please be careful. If the guy comes in here and pulls down on the hand or is holding the fingers and holding them away, that's not the act. The act is taking them and mashing them up the wrong way. That's also, I don't see this that often. Not for years. Next slide, please. The two-handed grip break. This is new. This is within the last 5 years or so. If you can break grips. You could do you remember when Phil Porter had a dozen different ways to break grips, the outside elbow in, the inside elbow out, all these kind of grip breaks. Those were good to break strong grips. But if you take 2 hands on the sleeve, like in the first picture here, and you push the hand away, or the second picture when he's got 1 hand on the bottom of the sleeve and on the top, and you wrench it away, that is the IJF doesn't want to see that. So this particular act is Shido. Okay. Next slide, please. All the other single grip breaks, you can grab your own lapel and take his wrist and separate. That's okay. It's 1 hand being used. Now here's a case. This is a subtle case. This isn't a very clear case of this kind of grip break. This is almost borderline. I don't know. Watch the white. I don't know if blue let go or white pried it off. It's so close that I don't know, but the referee caught it and the IJF said, yeah, it's a penalty. Could we move to the next line, please? All right, to break a grip with the knee. Most of you probably never seen this. This is an old time thing. where a guy would bring his knee up if you had a strong grip. There are two ways. This one is showing the putting the fist behind the knee and kicking the knee back to break the grip. The other one is bringing the knee up and bringing it on top of the wrist and shoving it down. Let's move to the video. It's much clearer in the video. And again, this is very, very rare. And it shouldn't be, because they cleared this up about 8 to 10 years ago. Notice how White puts her fist behind the knee, and she isn't successful, but she does do it. So technically, that action right there is illegal, according to the IJF. So next. All right. Oh, interesting. Maybe the other part is covered later, because there are some of these Shidos that, for me, there seem to be duplicates. Someone didn't go through them thoroughly enough. Covering up part of the lapel. If a guy reaches for you and you hold your own lapel down and won't let him grab it, or you put your hand up, not slapping it away, but just putting your hand up to keep him away from it, this is covered by the Shido 16. And the other case I've seen is where players will turn their self away and pull their jacket lapel all the way away so the other guy can't even reach them. That's also covered in here, even though it's not written in here. Okay, that's very rare also, and generally only done by top players. All right, next slide, please. All right, to strike, to break a grip, basically using your hand, your fist, the edge of your hand, the forearm, to strike an opponent's grip to break the grip. Let's go to the video. Next slide. Hopefully it will be very slow. All right, these are just some examples, 1, 2, 3. And yet you have to watch this, because this can be subtle and it's on the other side of the view. Watch Blue's left hand. Let's play it. Let's go through it again. And bam, right there. I hope everybody saw it. Can you slow that down, Ken? Does it give the window? Oh, it doesn't. Oh, there it is. Okay. Notice how she's using the palm of the hand. Not yet, right? Well, we're a long way from it. Yeah, here it goes. She loaded up. And slap. Breaks the grip. Okay, that's Shido. All right, next slide. All right, disarranging your own gi. If you pull your gi out, at the beginning of the match, I don't see that much anymore. In the old days, that was a big thing. They pull their gi out. If they pull their gi out and the yen came out completely, like this guy on the picture on the right side, that was mate penalty. If he pulls it up, if they pull it up and they let it go, this is my own interpretation. You higher up level guys, you interpret however you want. But if a guy were to pull the gi up, like that, and when the gi came down, it did not cover the color of the belt. I could still see the belt. I'd let him go. But if he pulled it up out enough where it came out and actually covered the belt up, that's too much. That's my opinion, not IJF's. Obviously, it's very subtle in that case, like that just pulling. But the one on the right, he really pulled it completely out. He disarranged his own gi. It's not right. The other thing they added recently, or maybe it's always been in rules, but I didn't know it, is if you disarrange the other guy's gi, which is interesting. That's something more advanced. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, leg grab and block. This we've kind of, 10 years ago, we had a lot of problems with this. They were giving Hansoku Make out. I want to tell you, the jiu-jitsu guys and the wrestling guys got all pissed about this. I'm sorry, but the judo, amazingly, the judo got much better when they stopped the leg grab. everybody is going for the legs. So anyways, the leg grab now is only a Shido, and it's not, we call it leg grab because it's easy to say. It does not mean just like grab. It could be trouser grab, or it could be a block with the palm of the hand, the forearm, any part of the forearm, or any part of the upper arm. So to grab the leg below the belt is illegal, and if it directly assists executes a throw, or to assist or aids a throw in a positive action, in other words, is used to make the throw, or to use negatively to block a throw, then this is illegal. And I use to borrow Star Wars phrases, it disturbs the force. If the leg is touched and the guy pulls the hand away and there's no, you see no disturbance in the bout, like the action, in other words, it didn't prevent the guy from escaping, or it didn't assist in the throw, then that's what we call incidental touching. You're not supposed to penalize that. Okay, next slide, please. That kind of interpretation, what's incidental and not, that's more advanced. You'll cover that with your higher level referees in your own area. But we have a lot of different things here. If blue comes in for an attack and white reaches around and grabs the hip like that, that's illegal. He's grabbing below the belt. Next. White grabs below the hip and grabs the hip to throw. That's illegal. It's below the belt. Now, let me explain. I don't know if it'll come up later, so I'll double tap this. If White's right hand there was touching the belt and some of his fingers were below the belt, that's okay. If he's touching the belt, he's on the belt, it's okay. But his hand is completely below the belt in this case, so it's illegal. But if he's on the belt, that's fine. And his fingers are touching below the hip, it's okay. Next is this, the white is trying like a Kouchi Maki Komi kind of thing, and he's using his hand and his upper arm to block blue's thighs from stepping back. This is illegal. This is assisting in a throw, and therefore it's mate and Shido. Next. And this is a case where he isn't gripping, he's just using the forearm and the upper arm to block the thigh in a Ochi Maki Komi kind of situation. And again, this is Shido, mate and Shido. Next slide, please.
And Rick, what about using your palm below the belt to prevent a throw?
That's a block, and it's not allowed. It's a defensive. If it stops a guy from attacking, it's mate and Shido. They're not allowed to touch below the belt to defend. Now, let me say, if the guy comes in and your hand touches the belt and some of the fingers are below the hip, it's okay because you're on the belt. That's the like the line they draw. White grabs the leg and prevents blue from throwing. You know, that was one of my favorite throws. Was a guy come in for Rai or G, and you do Teguruma. No more Teguruma. In the dojo, okay. In competition, not. In this middle picture, you have White here who's knocked to the ground on his knees, and Blue's trying to come in and attack with Uchimata or whatever. But see, notice White's right arm is blocking his hip, preventing action. He's not gripping. He's using the forearm to block. Therefore, he's obstructing positive action. That's a penalty. Mate and Shido, blocking the action. Okay, next. And White uses his left arm as like doing kataguruma. And, you know, if you put your arm in between, you're touching the leg below the belt. That's not allowed. And here he's using his upper arm and forearm as a shiver in football, you know, like he's lifting it with his arm. That's illegal also. Next slide, please. So those are all Shido penalties. You can't grab below the belt. Now, there are exceptions. If you have both hands, like gripping on the sleeve, which is above the belt, and you come in with the Kouchi Maki Komi, and now you use the forearm against the thigh, but notice that the grip, can you put an arrow on the White's left hand? That both hands are above the belt, therefore it is okay to block the thigh. And that's IJF interpretation. I didn't make that up. That's their interpretation. And if you know in the middle, he has a grip on the lapel above the belt, and he uses that back of the upper arm to block. So that's okay. So you can't penalize that. And then the third one is where, notice he has, he's doing an uchigari. He's got a sleeve, a lower arm grip on the sleeve above the belt, but he's slow enough where he's using his forearm to block the uke's left leg from stepping back. That's okay. That's allowed because he has a grip above the belt. This is kind of intricate stuff that you really have to keep your eyes open to see this stuff. Okay, next slide, please. Let's see what happens here. Okay, we'll stop it here for now, or just let it play. And what do you notice? This is subtle. The referee didn't even see this, I bet, because we were in the best point of view. If you notice carefully, Blue's right hand, watch where he grabs.
Mhm.
And he's using it, he's tugging it, trying to make the throw. It's illegal. It's below the belt, not allowed. All right, does everybody see that? Next. That's very clear. There's no question about that. On anybody in the world, that's very clear that. Now, I don't know, you could say, well, that's silly. It's like picayune, but we're not making the rules. Here's another case. Notice the grip is below the belt. Let's watch it again. Notice Blue has the jacket and he's pulling it. It's below the belt, so it's illegal. Next. So, very clear. See, he's got it. If he had grabbed the belt, that would have been okay. Encircle the belt or jacket end around the arm. This penalty, I've actually never seen it given in 50 years of refereeing. We do it for the arm traps and some of the key arm locks and stuff like that, where you trap the wrist with the belt or the lapel, because you're not going completely around. Encircle means going completely around. You're only going half the way, 180, but you trap the arm. That's okay. It's when you completely encircle it that it's illegal. And this is old time too, because what happened was, the story I heard, I don't know how true it is that there were no weight divisions in Japan in the early days. So when the little guys wanted to beat the big guys, they do things like cutting the blood off. They grab the sleeve and draw the guy in, and then grab it backwards and then spin it and try to cut the blood off to their arm so they couldn't use their arm as much, and then try to throw. And these were one of those tactics to make a larger man less effective. I don't know if that's just someone's story or if it's true. But basically, encircling the arm, if it's completely encircled, it's illegal. And again, I'm saying I've never seen it, so let's move on. If you see it, let me know. I'd be very interested. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. To take the judo gi in the mouth, you are not. Whoa, that was quick. You are not allowed to take your own judo gi in your mouth or your opponent's judo gi in your mouth. And again, I've seen this a couple of times, but very rare. So we'll skip this because I've seen it. I saw it. We got a guy from Switzerland 40 years ago in a dojo. I remember it because it's very unusual. And you would try to choke him, be on top of him, and he would take his gi and put it in his own mouth. Oh, all the slime and everything. But he said, "Oh yeah, in Switzerland, this is what we do." And I said, "Oh, but we never saw anything like that before." So put the foot or leg in the opponent's belt, collar, and lapel. This is, I've only seen it once. Interesting enough, and any of you guys, you would know, some of you Shufu people would know Faye Allen. I was an examiner for the PJ C-level examination many years ago, one of them, and Faye had a situation where a player actually did like the player was in Kamishi Ogatami, and the player reached up with his feet and caught underneath the collar of the uke to try to lift him. That's what this covers. You never see that. And she called mate and gave the penalty. And the coach was screaming and everything. And I had to tell them, look, this is the rule. She's the only one who knew the rule. That's one of the reasons that she passed, along with doing a good job overall. All right, Shimewaza, we'll stop. I think we'll need to stop here. Right, we'll restart on November 7th at Shido penalty 24. I'm sorry I rushed through them. We went much slower than I thought we would, but I hope that I've enlightened you a bit to show you the different penalties up to this point, and we will continue on with the remaining 30 for the Shido, and then the other 11, 12, 13 Hansoku Make penalties. Does anybody have any questions? If you want to ask a question, go to chat and go ahead and speak up, and they'll open your mic. Any comments?
Thank you.
Mickey,
Great,
you have a
great
question?
as usual. Mickey?
I just wanted to give a plug to a judo tournament. Can I do that?
Quick.
We're looking for judo, for referees to come to the Minuteman tournament, November 21st in Massachusetts. Anyone interested in coming? The first 4 to 8 national referees who sign up will be able to get a room for Saturday night. I'm just saying, let me know. So I hope to see some of you there.
Okay, good. Very good. Yeah, make sure you have Mickey. Mickey will be sending an invitation out soon. I will send it to my email list around this area, so you'll have her email. If you can make it up there, they do need the help. It'll be very interesting, different environment for us down here. All right, any other questions? If not, I want to thank everybody very much for going through this. I hope that I've enlightened you somewhat, and any kind of clarifications that you need to go to your local referee authority to get them cleared up. And as I mentioned, we will continue with part 2 on November 7th, starting at 6 p.m.
It's a very comprehensive presentation. We look forward to your next presentation, and I wish everybody a good night.